The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Eliza Singh, and I'll be your moderator today. Thank you so much for joining us today at Netcom Learning, a market leader in promoting lifelong learning, training, and talent development solutions. We are very excited to host today's webinar, Ansible 101, an introduction to automating everything with Red Hat training. So please excuse us if this webinar goes over time by about 5 to 7 minutes. Presenting today's topic is John Walter. John is a solutions architect for the Red Hat training and certification team, specializing in cloud and DevOps technologies. He's a Red Hat certified architect with a deep knowledge of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, Ansible automation, and OpenShift container platform. John follows a unique style of training where he teaches different tricks, shares tips, and shortcuts to make everyday use of the software more comfortable and faster. Please bear in mind that this is an overview of a very robust topic. We offer a collection of technical and business courses that can be tailored towards your specific requirements. And if you're interested in further discussion, you can make an appointment with our learning consultants through our website, www.netcomlearning.com. Today's session is also being recorded, so you will get free access to the recording in the next 24 hours via email. Netcom Learning helps customers build innovative learning organizations by achieving a smarter workforce, adopting to change, and driving growth. We do this with a broad catalog of offerings, developing customized learning plans, and our global delivery capabilities. Since 1998, we have been empowering organizations with our managed learning services to help them reach optimal performance results and address challenges. We have 9 practice areas in which we specialize. They encompass people, process, and technology training. Today's presentation is from the application development practice area. Netcom Learning offers a comprehensive training portfolio for application development courses. Our upcoming classes include various trainings on Red Hat Ansible, Enterprise Linux, OpenShift, and many more. Private trainings to the teams are also available, of which the learning plan can be customized to specific needs of that audience. You can also access a variety of application development marketing assets, such as free 1-hour training, free on-demand trainings, and blogs by clicking on the available webinar handout. These offerings can be found with a simple search on our website, www.netcomlearning.com. In this webinar, we will highlight the benefits of using Ansible to automate tasks across a variety of Red Hat Enterprise Linux, Windows, cloud, and networking devices. The webinar will also talk about the benefits of using Red Hat Ansible and Ansible Tower to manage complex automation workflows. Now I'll just give you a quick overview of the logistics before we get started. To start with, you have the option to adjust the window size to your liking. Simply hit the Escape key and find the Zoom button on the top left corner of your GoToWebinar viewer. Everyone has been muted except for our presenters. Please feel free to submit any questions you have for the presenters here in the questions pane, and we will address them at the end of the session. To get the best out of today's webinar, we have included the slides, courses we talked about, and marketing assets in the handout section of your GoToWebinar viewer. You may refer to them to get a better understanding of the topic. And now I'll pass this over to John to present today's topic. Hi, John.
Hey, Eliza, thanks. And thanks everyone for joining today. Give me 1 second and I will share my screen.
I see your screen now, John.
Well, thank you. We'll jump right into it. Again, I'm John Walter. I'm a solutions architect on the training certification team at Red Hat. I've been at Red Hat for about 6 years, doing all kinds of different things. Largely been with the training and certification team for the last 3 years. But today we'll be providing an introduction to Ansible. Hopefully Ansible is something that you, or at least somewhat familiar with, have probably heard it being talked about as a solution. And so we're going to talk a lot about kind of the ins and outs and exactly what it can do. We're going to start a little bit with a kind of a high level overview as to where Ansible fits. So from a Red Hat perspective, we really have divided our portfolio into these three pillars. We have hybrid cloud infrastructure. So this is everything on the public and private clouds, bare metal servers, virtualized infrastructure. So think RHEL, OpenStack, Red Hat virtualization. The second pillar being the cloud native development. So this is much more on the application platforms. So things like OpenShift, Kubernetes, our middleware and services portfolio. Somewhat recently, we've really kind of moved into this management and automation area, right? And this is where we're going to be focusing today, right? How can we make it easier for our customers to seamlessly manage not just their Red Hat platforms and infrastructure, but also automate across all of their environment and hybrid environments, right? We know that nobody is using just Red Hat's stack within their environment. There needs to be a single language or a single platform that can automate across all of these different platforms and use cases. So, and we know that, as tech gets more and more complicated, there is obviously a need to be able to automate specific tasks. And we also know that pretty much every organization that we start working with, they are already starting to automate, if not already been down the road of automation for a while. But no two teams, or typically two business units within an organization, are organically automating with the same platform. If you are a network operations or network administrator, you're probably provided an automation tool from Cisco or Juniper or Arista, whoever vendor. If you're on the security team, maybe you're using something like Twistlock or Nessus. Maybe you're a Linux administrator and you're relying largely on Bash scripts. So, automation is happening. The first step going down that road has started, but how do we capture all of this automation and centralize and get visibility into all of these different tasks that we're automating if we're not using a shared platform? And the challenges, I would say, don't even stop there, right? The people within these teams, they typically have different motivations. They have different bases of knowledge. If we were to just bring all these teams together and say, hey, everyone needs to start to automate, that is obviously not going to just right off the bat, everyone's not going to start automating with the same platform. And so, we need to be able to bring everyone to the table to understand, obviously, the importance of automation, but also the importance of a shared and single and unified platform. And so, we want to be able to address a lot of these different changes, these challenges by integrating different tools within these different silo domains. We want to streamline the processes around the different tools. We want to break down the silos between the teams by integrating the various tools and processes across these different teams. And we want to establish consistent governance, right? We want there to be established processes across all of these different products and technologies. And finally, we have to be able to offer a clear interface that will provide each of these individual lines of business with a clear interface that they can then consume the resources as part of the automation, right? We need to provide a clear means to implement new processes and new content to extend the automation itself. And that's really where Ansible comes in. And obviously throughout this whole presentation, there's going to be kind of a common thread, right? And that's how Ansible is meant to simplify the collaboration and the coordinated automation across the entire IT infrastructure. I think a lot of people's misconception with Ansible is, hey, Red Hat is the Linux company, Red Hat's the OpenShift company, they're the OpenStack company, and this is a platform to automate those tools. No, this is a platform that is meant to automate the entire IT infrastructure. So let's jump into the why. Right? Is there a single turnkey solution for automation? No. There are components and problems that are found in each department, and a lot of the times they're similar to each other. But when we combine all of these different challenges together with the actual products and the tools, those problems and their components are often quite unique depending on the department, even within the departments. And the situation is developing and changing over time. And so that means There's not a single turnkey solution that solves everything once and for all. And so the solution has to be a platform that can be used to build a solution tailored to individual needs and grow for future development and as those needs change and evolve. And so that's really what the Ansible automation platform is here to solve. And really we talk about Ansible in these kind of three characteristics, right? Because Ansible automation platform is not Ansible itself, and we'll talk about really what the Ansible platform kind of comprises in just a little bit. But we talk about these three separate characteristics. The first being power, the power of a single universal language across all of these different technology domains, being able to do more than just say configuration management, right? The use cases are beyond just a configuration management. It's provisioning, it's application deployment, it's orchestration, it's security and compliance. The second being the simplicity, right? The simple nature of the Ansible language to enable a very broad selection of users to become very functional in a very short space of time. And we'll talk about, what makes Ansible so simple. Well, it doesn't require you to, say, be a Python developer. You don't have to have any kind of coding experience in order to get started. All of these are written in YAML syntax. And so really it's just understanding, what the task at hand is, what it is that you're trying to achieve, and building out essentially an opinionated step-by-step playbook to define the ideal state of a system. And we'll show some examples of that. And then finally, the third component being the agentless model, right? This allows us to really seamlessly integrate with a variety of different technology platforms well outside of Red Hat stack. And the platform enables an enterprise to operate and manage with Ansible at the scale and complexity and flexibility that's really required by modern IT organizations. And so what does it mean, in detail, right? What can the Ansible automation platform actually do? It can do a lot, and it can do it across all of these different domains. So you could orchestrate a fleet of virtual machines across the open hybrid cloud, whether it's deployed on vSphere or AWS, or maybe on Rev, or maybe all of the above. You could manage the configuration of networking devices across multiple data centers. You can enable application deployment to integrate load balancer changes and CMDB configuration. We can enable developers to provision their own storage objects in an automated fashion when it's needed. We can embed the automated configuration of external services into a CI/CD pipeline. We could integrate firewalls with intrusion detection, into a streamlined security remediation workflow. So, the use cases and what we can automate against, very, very, very broad, right? It's meant to encompass your entire IT footprint. And you can see here, we work with a lot of different platforms, a lot of different partners. There are more than 90 certified, what we call content collections, that support over 30 different partners, and they cover multiple different use cases. And so, we work with all of these different partners to certify content to automate against their platforms. So when you go to the Ansible automation platform and you want to consume, say, Cisco or Arista or Juniper, network automation content, that's stuff that's been certified by those vendors with Red Hat. And so, why these specific platforms and partners? What matters with automation is what IT organizations are aiming to accomplish, right? And so we won't spend too much time on the certified content program. This is all essentially, think of this as a repository of pre-built automation that you can then take and adapt. We're going to talk a little bit more about homegrown automation, taking things and adapting your processes to automate. So what makes a platform? What does this platform consist of, and how do the components work with each other? Well, first and foremost, there are a bunch of different components, and this enables us to build an automation solution that's tailored to our needs to solve the problems that we face. And a core part of that is Ansible, the actual architecture itself. Essentially, we want to be able to, one, provide you with the ability to create your own automation. We want you to be able to consume existing automation, and we want you to be able to operationalize it as well. And so we'll dive into that in these next few slides here. The first and foremost big piece, and don't spend too much reading all this text. This is all very high level product definition stuff. But again, we want to talk about creating, operating, consuming, right? These are the three areas in which Ansible is used. And those areas are tied to certain kinds of users or personas. So you typically, your creators, they're going to be your sysadmins or engineers or subject matter experts, your domain experts. They're going to be actually writing what we call playbooks. Playbooks are just scripts that define the ideal state of a system. You have operators, so those are, maybe automation administrators if your organization has already started to kind of build out what that role looks like. Maybe that's network administrators, cloud administrators, firewall operators. And then you have consumers. These are typically non-automators that are wanting to use turnkey automation. Or maybe they are automators, but they're not from an IT domain, right? They're just consuming automation, which is not really native to them. So these were the personas. So what does the technology stack really look like? Well, this is what it looks like. The architecture of the platform consists of a few core components. And you can see that here on the right side, which are used by essentially mentioned personas that are related to the automation, which is on the left side. So remember, we have the content creators, the operators, the domain experts, the users. So we'll dive into each of these different pieces, right? We're going to start with create, we'll go into operate, and then into consume. So the create piece, I think, is probably the most important, at least in my opinion, right? This is where we're actually writing the actual automation code, which in the end is going to move the bits and pieces. So at the core of automation is the language itself, in which the content of the automation is written in. So we start with what the Ansible automation looks like, what the language looks like, how it can be written, how content written in the language is managed. And as part of that, we take the perspective of the people in charge of this, the domain experts who know all about the systems in question. They need to write and maintain the actual code, right? And so I'm going to provide an example in this next slide. But a quick example. So let's say you're a network administrator. So you're trying to configure Cisco switches. Instead of customized bash scripts that may be hard to read, they're harder to maintain, harder to update. There are standardized playbooks that are leveraged that are leveraging the Cisco written integration, which then can then be read and understood by people that aren't familiar with Cisco or aren't familiar with bash. So let's see an example of what one of these playbooks looks like. And this will be a pretty simple example. If you're not familiar with YAML syntax, it's just a markup language. There are some particulars as to how it's formatted as far as spacing and things like that. But essentially what you're seeing here, it's rather short. It consists of 3 tasks. So you see at the very, very top, we're trying to install and start an Apache web server. This is targeting probably a Linux system. But if we start and work our way down from the top, we have obviously the name of what this playbook is looking to achieve, the install and start Apache. We're targeting a specific group of hosts. This hosts is referencing web, which is just a grouping of web servers. So that could, on the back end, I'll have an inventory file. The inventory file may have 1 system, it may have 1,000 systems, but they're all going to be associated with that group web. The next directive is become yes. So certain tasks you're going to need to have some escalated privileges. And so become yes actually allows you, it essentially is like giving you sudo access on a Linux side. But then from there, we're going through task by task. And the language itself is simple to grasp, and because each task carries that name statement, it's already essentially partially documented, right? So it's quick to learn, there's low entry barrier, no developer skills are really needed. And myself as, say, a Linux administrator, there are going to be certain things that point out to me very, very quickly, right? This first task is making sure that the HTTPD or the Apache package is present. Now, I have been using RHEL for almost 10 years now, so I know that Yum is our package manager. And so that is a module, and we'll talk about what these are in just a second. And so think of modules as tools in the toolkit, right? These are, if you were going to be running these commands manually, well, in order to install the Apache package, you would run yum install HTTPD, and that would allow you to install the latest and greatest. We also have some directives here. So below yum, there's name and state. These are options. So all of the different things that I would want to do Maybe it's making sure that I'm just downloading the package and I'm not installing it. Maybe I'm clearing my Yum cache. All these different options I could do with that specific module. So that's one task. The next task, latest index HTML file is present. This is really just taking a file from my source machine where I'm running my automation from and copying it to my hosts, the end systems. And then finally, the third task is making sure that that service is started, running the service module. I just need to say what state I want that service to be in and what service I'm actually targeting. So, what is behind these different kind of keywords like Yum and template? What is behind those? How do they work? Well, so there's, again, three main pieces of a playbook, right? There's the actual plays, there's modules, and then there's plugins. And so we'll look at each one of these one by one. So the plays themselves or I should say a playbook itself is composed of one or more plays in an ordered list, right? So if you're not familiar with sports, this is a sports analogy. Essentially, each play executes part of the overall goal of the playbook. And so the play usually defines, what machines are going to be affected by the keyword hosts. The connection details are defined. I mentioned, providing privilege escalation if you need to. And so in the beginning, it's not uncommon that a playbook only has one play. Each play runs one or more tasks. Each task calls an Ansible module. So what is a module? Where in this case, the example that we used was template, right? So we had the template module. The modules themselves are essentially parameterized components that have internal logic that represent the step that needs to be done, right? So the modules are the things that are actually doing what we wanted to do within Ansible. Typically, the modules are written in in Python, although a lot are written in PowerShell for Windows setups. But technically, they can be any language. And then this provides a lot of flexibility, right? Think of them like Lego building blocks. They write the automation step by step. And so if you needed to, say, automate tasks in VMware, they just check out the modules that they need. You write them underneath, you'd add the parameters, and then you're done. In this case, I just need to copy a file. I can use a template module. I can use a copy module. There's a few different, I can use a line and file module. But are modules all that we have? Are there other ways in which we can change and affect the automation? Well, that's really where roles come into play. And Ansible roles really allow creators to write their direct automation commands or set of tasks and variables in a way that's really reusable and scalable. These can be shared with people on your team, with a different team, an entire organization to try to ease the adoption of automation, and also to kind of define official or opinionated ways to automate certain components. So, there can be a role to, say, properly set up and configure a PostgreSQL database server. And there could be a role to configure basic security means on all of the servers. And there could be a role to properly configure all of your web servers. But where do roles, modules, plugins, where do they come from? How can we manage them? Where do we get more? And that's where collections comes in. And so each of these are components of this entire platform. And the goal, again, is to, really, you want to start small. You want to find, individual tasks that you can start to automate and build automation from this. I will give you a few examples. I came from the support organization. I worked in the support org within Redhat for about 2 years before moving into a new role, before I moved into my current role. And my team, my role, my specialty domain was within services and automation. And so essentially what most of my job entailed was helping our customers take their bash scripts and build Ansible automation scripts from those bash scripts. And a lot of the times they were quite monolithic. They were probably maintained by multiple people over several years. And by the time I was working with that customer, a lot of times they weren't even a part of the actual development of this script. They were only being tasked with coming in and trying to malform it. And so, or adapt it, I should say. So, there's a lot to get started with, right? And collections is a great way to get access to content. A lot of what's in collections are existing playbooks, existing roles, opinionated sets of playbooks that provide interfaces for a lot of typical use cases. basically a jumping off point so that you don't have to start building all of these playbooks from scratch. And these are collections that are, often provided by Red Hat in tandem with certain partners. And so if you're trying to automate your, F5 routers, F5 and Red Hat have certified content for those exact use cases. So there, on the left side, what you're seeing here, these are, essentially hubs or repositories. This is all content that's either being provided or hosted privately, maybe on your GitHub repository, or is being provided by Red Hat or partners via the Automation Hub or the community repository. So remember, all this is open source. So there's the kind of the Red Hat version, and then there's the upstream community version. So Automation Hub, that's the Red Hat version. This is going to be from Red Hat and from our partners. Ansible Galaxy, this is the community repository. And you actually have the ability to then import all of what is available in these different repositories and centralize that in your own private automation hub so that your teams only have access to the correct systems or to the correct automation. So once you have all these different components, right, you have all this automation built out, how do we actually operationalize this automation? Well, that takes us into this next section around operate. And so, executing automation is what operators usually worry about, right? How do we operate all this automation? Where is what executed how, and how do we track it all? So let's assume, you're an operator, you work for, whatever corporation, and there's a person running all the bits and pieces and doing stuff on the command line regularly. So we'll look at the actual bits and pieces. So the first is a playbook actually running. So you can see here on the right side, and this is an output from Ansible Tower, which is the platform, the web UI, where we can actually operationalize a lot of this stuff. But you can see here, this is what that same playbook that we saw earlier, install and start Apache, is actually being run on 3 nodes here on the right side. And you can see here, essentially, we're running this against 3 hosts. The playbook it goes through task by task, ordered execution. In each task, a module is doing the work that we mentioned before. If our playbook was more complicated, maybe there were variables, maybe we were surveying the end system to get information and plugging in that information in variables, we can make these even more and more complicated. But in this case, 3 pretty simple tasks. You can see here the output, the tasks are named. So I have task 1, HTTPD package is present. You see here below that there's that yellow text that says changed on nodes 1 through 3. So Ansible won't actually make changes to a system unless it has to. This is the concept of idempotency. Essentially, we're describing the ideal state of what we want these systems to be within this playbook. Ansible goes through and runs that automation against those systems. But what if that system is already in the ideal state? Well, Ansible has no reason to actually run any commands on those systems. So if we were to run this exact same automation again, we would actually see that no changes were made. We would see that the task ran and it was okay, but it wouldn't have changed anything. And so what we're trying to provide here is, a clear and simple to follow execution pattern. We want it to be easy to understand, even with, limited background in what it is that we're actually automating against, right? This is something that, an operations person would be able to run this script and see that there was a success or a failure. They would see what tasks succeeded, if any, which failed, which were skipped. And they would get a lot of feedback just from this output without actually have to be, say, a Linux administrator, have any kind of real visibility into what's going on under the hood. So, there's a few different things within Ansible Tower, and here you're seeing, again, this is the web UI Ansible Tower you're seeing on the right side. Where does all our automation code get executed, right? So on a central cluster on nodes that are distributed across the network, which are connected to the cluster that's known as Ansible Tower. And so management of surroundings like credentials or syncing to a GitHub repository, all that's taken care of, and it also provides a full audit trail of the entire execution as it's happening. So central execution of code, teams don't have to worry about who needs to execute what or where. If you have a dev and an ops team that run automation code with different Git repos for their playbooks or different credentials or different server nodes that are spread across multiple data centers, all of that can be taken care of transparently via the Ansible Tower cluster. And we can get full visibility into who's running what automation on what systems. But how do we know which machines we're talking to, right? How can we influence that? How do we capture what all of these different systems are? So I kind of alluded to this a little bit earlier on, but Ansible has this concept of inventories, which are basically just a list of nodes that it can talk to, which are also grouped or can be grouped together. And so if you can see here on the right side, this is an example of an inventory that I built for a workshop that I did. And so within this workshop, we were automating 4 routers, and then we also had our control node. And so you can see here the hosts are listed on the left. I have Ansible, and then router 1, router 2, router 3, router 4. And then to the right of that, you can see related groups. So I can actually group these in multiple ways. So you can see that the Ansible host is only in one group. This is my control group. And maybe that has, escalated privileges, or maybe, it's actually locked down to only a specific user being able to access that host. You can also see that the routers have 2 groups associated with them. So the first one of those groups is going to be what the vendor is. So router 1 is a Cisco router, router 2 is an Arista router, router 3 is a Juniper router, and router 4 is another Arista router. But then you can also see what data center they're deployed in, because I've created a second group that I can then target just what's in this data center or just the Arista routers. So it just gives me, a different way of being able to structure all of these different nodes. And as I add different nodes, maybe I add 10 more routers in different data centers, I can continue to expand on these different groups. I can start to target very specifically based on multiple characteristics. And so these lists, they can be created statically. I can create them myself manually. They can also be generated dynamically for asking, some kind of a CMDB or some sort of source of truth. So if you've got a bunch of vSphere instances or Azure Cloud or AWS or Red Hat Satellite, you can use those system management tools to essentially feed what nodes you have access to into Ansible Tower. So you don't have to actually build out these inventories yourself. So you can have all these other systems do this work for you. And so, the big takeaway here is, I would say, say you have a cloud team, they start automating with Ansible. So instead of manually collecting the knowledge about all the existing virtual machines and updating that frequently, the information is actually being collected from those cloud accounts themselves, and actions can be executed across them. So now we know how to execute and what to run against it. But what if we have one, or I should say more than one thing to actually execute? Can we chain those? And that's where things like workflows come into play. So where Ansible building, I should say playbooks, is where we're actually building the automation, the individual pieces of this workflow. Ansible Tower allows me to actually chain together these different jobs, and they're linked using this graph-like structure you have here on the right side that can be modified with this nice visual editor. And so it provides a really holistic overview of the automation. It enables, you can stitch together automation code from different teams. You can fork different tasks to run simultaneously and have logic for handling successful or failed outcomes. And so this is really big. Like, orchestration across multiple automation jobs, even from different teams, is really, really key. So maybe you have, I think in this specific example, we had a storage and networking team and an operations team all have their own automation code in their own repositories. And so we built a workflow to bring all their code for a really complex deployment together. And so the deployment is laid out via this workflow. It enables us to really start this complex process across multiple teams just by clicking one button. So this is how we can execute the automation even across all these different teams. Now we need to be able to integrate it with the other tools and with things like our monitoring tools, our security tools. And so there is an API that Ansible provides, and it does allow you to really seamlessly integrate with a lot of the other tools that you're probably already using, like monitoring tools and other orchestration tools like a SOAR or a CI/CD pipeline or a build system. And so, the value here is you can neatly integrate the automation into existing environments and processes, and you can use what's there. You can glue it together instead of throwing everything away and having to build it from the ground up. And beyond this, we need a way of actually getting visibility in all of this as well, right? So we need to have a centralized dashboard to get visualization of the actual automation. We need analytics. We need logging, right? And so Ansible Tower comes with all of these different features. It also provides you, as mentioned on that last slide, the ability to just plug in whatever analytics tooling, or if you're using like an Elk Stack, if you want to have centralized logging with Tower, that's great. If you want to be able to leverage existing logging mechanisms that you're already using for, say, your entire Linux environment, you can also do that. And so, this just gives you a quick overview of the operational state of the systems. You get deep insight into the adoption and usage of automation across your entire inventories. You can see in the example here on this left photo, this is a Tower instance that I had for a workshop that I did a few months ago. I only have 5 hosts, right? And I can see right here, as soon as I go into my Tower, that I have 5 hosts and they're all reachable because I have 0 failed hosts. And so at any point, I can actually get visibility into the uptime or just the upstate of all of my different endpoints very, very quickly. I can see how many inventories I have available, if there have been any kind of sync failures across those. I can see what jobs were recently run or what templates were recently run. So we've talked about actually building automation. We talked about operationalizing. Now we need to talk about how can we consume. And consuming automation is all about how to provide your automation content to others. And this might be people who are not that technical at all, but it might be people who are very technical, but just in a totally different IT domain from you. And so, after all, automation, the whole point is bringing a lot of these different teams together. So the consume piece, right? Automation is really nothing without people actually using it, right? You can spend a lot of time building out automation, but if people aren't adopting it, if you're not mapping it to their workflows, if they're not making it shift and move things in their daily work, automation platform is quite useless. So let's assume we're a user of automation, right? We're a person who needs stuff to be done, and we want that to happen automatically. So how do we consume the automation from the platform? Well, one is self-service, right? So within Tower is the ability to have these self-service capabilities that enable you to consume that pre-created automation content that is provided by others. The inherent strength in offering this form of automation consumption is in reducing the required direct communication between all of these different consumers and probably the very limited set of people who are actually building the automation. So that the people who pre-created the automation content don't even really have to know who specifically is using their content. Now, one thing to note here, credentials used in the automation content are not exposed to the consumers. So people who write automation content can even include the necessary credentials without the fear of losing control of that automation. So you can see here 2 different examples of how to access self-service. The left side is via Ansible Tower, which is typically just installed on-prem. And on the right is actually through the Red Hat hosted service catalog. Both kind of serve different use cases. I would say that what you're typically going to see on the Ansible Tower side is going to be much more tailored to your environment, whereas what you're seeing on the Red Hat hosted service catalog is going to be a little more general, probably need to have some kind of adaptation. And then finally, role-based access control is a huge piece of this too. Access to automation content can be limited to only what a consumer needs. And Ansible Tower offers role-based access control so that people can be grouped in teams, roles can be assigned to these groups, permissions can be granted or denied to pretty much every object, such as jobs or credentials. And there's actually an auditor role that's already predefined that's available, and they can see all aspects of all systems, but they have no permissions to actually run automation. So that's for those who need that kind of system level auditor role. And this is all backed up by enterprise authentication, right? The Tower authentication can be connected to Active Directory or whatever LDAP system that you're already using, other enterprise tools. the groups and roles that you have within Ansible Tower can be mapped accordingly to what policies you already have established within your actual environment. So I know that that was very, very quick. I do have a couple other things to hit on just as far as what kind of training we have available, and then we'll start to wrap up. I did want to mention that training greatly enables your ability to get started with really all of our products, but specifically with regard to Ansible Tower. Staff that trained with Red Hat can deploy IT resources, whether that be physical servers, VMs, containers, storage, about 59% more efficiently than their untrained counterparts, which is a huge improvement in their ability to ensure that their organization can support the development and business operations in a timely manner. Cannot stress enough how important it is to have a deep understanding of both Ansible engine, where you're actually building the automation, Ansible Tower, where we're consuming and operationalizing, and then the overall platform, which includes things like Automation Hub. We do offer multiple ways for training, and definitely reach out to us, and we can help you to identify what exactly the best kind of route, the best modality is for you. But we do offer training both in instructor-led fashion as well as self-paced. And I believe that Eliza is going to touch on this in just a little bit as far as what courses and things that we offer. But all of our courses are available across multiple modalities, and certainly as here in the States, at least, as things start to reopen, we will start getting back to live in-person training. But right now we're pretty much leaning on remote virtual instructor-led training, as well as our self-paced offerings. And then as far as certification, if you're interested in becoming certified across Ansible or any of our other technologies, we do offer several certifications for these products. As of just last year, we did actually roll out the ability to take certification exams remotely. So while our partner facilities haven't opened yet across all of the country or across all of the world for obvious reasons, you do have the ability to take one of our certification exams on your own hardware from the comfort of your own home. It is a proctored exam, just like if you were to take it at one of our testing facilities. So keep that in mind, that there are a couple hardware requirements as far as needing an external webcam, things like that, but all of that laid out pretty straightforward. And then finally, I did want to give just a brief overview of what our Ansible curriculum really looks like. At the very top, you're going to see an Ansible Essentials. This is a free technical overview. Gets a little bit more in depth than what I covered today. But from there, depending on what it is that you're looking to automate, we do have several kind of level 1 courses to get started actually building automation across either network environments, Linux environments, or Windows environments. And then all of that kind of bundles into what we would call our DevOps Engineer course, or our Advanced Ansible course. And that course is really kind of a split between best practices as well as getting you exposure and working with Ansible Tower. So, really depending on what you are automating, that path is really going to be from, if you're a network administrator, that DO457 course into our DO447 course, straight down the middle for Linux administrators, and obviously Windows admins will start there on the right and go down to that Ansible Tower course. So with that, I do want to thank everyone. I know we have some time for questions, but Eliza, I will kick it back to you.
Thank you so much. It was really, really informative. And really, when you started the webinar and you spoke about, other vendors that you're working with, you mentioned Cisco, Juniper, and I know that you guys are also working with Microsoft and their Azure platform. There's so many different things that you guys are doing. It's amazing. I have all kinds of people come and ask me these kind of questions all the time, and it's very great. You guys are not shy talking about it, and this is a really, really nice step in that direction. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give people a little bit of time to put in their questions in the chat panel. We have a lot of people over here, and I'm going to try to get all the questions to you. But until then, I do think it's fair that I take people through the promotions that we are having for Red Hat. By the way, the learning plan that you showed with the free training, it all starts with free, right? The free training, the DO007. Amazing name for the course also, by the way. I really, really believe that, we have all of that. And if people want to take it, that they're more than welcome to. So just to take you through our website and where you can find this information, I want to take you through the website. I want to take you through the navigation of it. So it's very easy. You come to www.vetcomlearning.com. And what you see over here, you see Red Hat right over here. You could just type in Red Hat here, or you could just click right here. Now, this is going to take you to the Red Hat vendor page. And at any given point of time, if you want to ask us a question, just fill out the form and we'll be happy to answer any questions for you. You're welcome to download the brochure as well. But I want to take you to one of my favorite parts of this page, and that is the subscription. Because I promised you freebies, I'm going to show you more freebies. I'm going to just open that in a separate tab. And once you go into the Red Hat Learning Subscription, as they call it, RHLS, what you will see is various, well, it's a little bit small. Let me make it a little bit big. Okay. You have 7-day free trial that you can actually take. And for 7 days, you can access all different kinds of e-learnings through the Red Hat Learning subscription. And considering that, everybody knows about Red Hat already, if you want, you can also go for the premium subscription, which is for 1 year, and you get about 400 hours of lab access, not about, up to 400 hours of lab access. And it also includes 5 exams and 2 retakes. If you want to know a little bit more about this particular subscription, what I'd ask you to do is just go onto the Red Hat page, and you will be able to find different courses. You will be able to find different subscriptions right over here. So you should be able to find all of that. Another thing that I want to talk about is how do you get to courses? So like John was talking about DO007, you just use our search box and you'll be able to see the free, I did not publish it. I am sorry, but you should be able to see the free training that you can sign up for through us as well. Otherwise, what I can also take you through under Red Hat are the other courses that John was talking about. And once you come over here, you will be able to see all different courses over here. Now, of course, they go in between e-learning and they have the virtual instructor-led trainings as well. With e-learning, John, correct me if I'm wrong. You guys have 2 types of e-learning. There is a self-paced e-learning that is with video, and there is one which is more towards the slides side. Is that correct?
That's right. So we have what we call our video classroom, where we've taken one of our instructors and actually recorded them delivering the course as though it were in a live setting. So that's one way to consume it if you prefer to have someone sort of teaching you. And then the other is really more of kind of a text-heavy version of it, right? It's essentially just a nice, sleek version of the textbook. It's reading intensive. There's going to be maybe a few videos peppered in, a lot of code blocks and things like that, but 2 different ways to consume just based on your learning style.
Okay. So if I were to create a learning path over here, right, I would start with Ansible for network automation, and then I would go into the advanced automation, Ansible best practices, and then higher above than that, it would be this one.
Well, it's always going to depend on what it is that you're looking to automate. So definitely you would want to start, if you were a network administrator, with that Ansible for network automation. You'd go into the advanced automation from there. And then from there, we'll continue to sort of roll out more and more advanced courses. It really just depends on what it is that you're looking to automate. Will depend on where you're going to start. And as far as Linux automation, we have a few other courses that are included in this as well, that can kind of extend your knowledge outside of just that specific use case.
Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the floor for questions now, because I have spoken too much. But if you guys want to look at more webinars, you want to look at more promotions, you can always come to our promotions page and you will see various promotions over here. Also, if you want to sign up for other webinars, and you could just send us a message and we can have John here for you again. We do not respect his calendar as much as he does. So we will have John over here for you again on a different topic. Just send us a small email, and you will be able to see other webinars as well. You also have access to on-demand webinars. So if you've missed a webinar in the past, or if you missed this webinar today, probably watched only half of it, joined in late, you will be able to see this webinar under all recorded webinars in about 24 hours. So I'm going to go back to the questions now, and I'm going to see what all people are asking. All right. So the very first question that I see, John, it's for you. What is the difference between Ansible and other config management tools like Puppet or Chef?
So really good question. I would say this is probably the most common question I get around Ansible. And, really the big thing is that Puppet, Chef, they are fantastic configuration management tools. Ansible is really setting out to do more than just configuration management. I talked about a lot of the different use cases and how we're trying to extend beyond just configuration management. So whether that be, providing a platform for developers to be able to deploy their applications, maybe add them to a load balancer, do penetration testing, building out a complex workflow of automation for tasks beyond just configuration management. Now, having said that, a big part of it is also just how you get started. Puppet and Chef, I believe Puppet uses Puppet language, and then Chef uses recipes. So there's a barrier to entry as far as just how to actually start coding. Whereas YAML, the syntax is quite simple. I learned YAML syntax in about 45 minutes, and then it was more just around starting simple and growing in complexity. And then I would say the final piece is, because Ansible is agentless, you're not required to have anything installed on the endpoints to automate them. So with Puppet, and there are some exceptions to this, but with Puppet, for instance, you need a Puppet agent on, let's say, all of your RHEL systems that you want to automate. So that's one more package to manage from a Linux administrator perspective. That's one more package that could potentially be exploited from a security perspective. So those are what I'd say would be the big pieces. The other thing that I'll say is that it doesn't have to be Chef or Puppet versus Ansible, or you don't have to choose one or the other. We have plenty of customers who have long since been Chef or Puppet customers who are now starting to adapt Ansible and use both. They're using Ansible and essentially taking their existing automation that they have with Puppet and Chef and wrapping Ansible around that, so they don't have to completely refactor, re-architect all this automation. They can leverage what they already have, but as new use cases emerge, or as use cases start to change, they're then pivoting to Ansible for anything net new. But really good question.
Thank you. Even I understood that. Not because even I understood that. Okay, next question. And I think you've answered part of this question already. How does Ansible work with products outside of Red Hat's portfolio?
Yes, so we spent a little bit of time on that a little bit earlier, but so all of these Ansible uses modules, and these modules are typically written in Python, but they can be any other language. And what those modules are doing essentially are just running the same kind of commands that we would be running manually to do those different things. So we work with a lot of vendors to build these modules that work for their specific environments. And so let's say I'll use a ping module for an example. So there's a ping module that is for Linux and Unix devices to run the ping command. But there's also a win_ping module, and that's for Windows ping. Obviously it needs to build differently. That one's written in PowerShell, targets Windows devices. There's an iOS_ping to ping Cisco iOS devices. There is a Vios_ping module. And so, we work with Cisco or Juniper or Microsoft to build those modules. We certify them. And so, we're always working with these other vendors. I think that's, one of the big kind of, and obviously I'm a little biased, but I would say that's one of the biggest things I like about Red Hat is we always try to be neutral, right? We want to be vendor agnostic because, we really see the value, excuse me, we really see the value in
Bless you.
bringing all of these different vendors to the table, especially when we know that no two environments are going to be the same, and no customer is just using Red Hat stack. And so we have to be able to build a platform, the whole value of which is being able to automate across all of these different platforms outside of Red Hat.
All right. That is really nice. Being vendor agnostic is actually very nice. And this is actually what I love about Red Hat also. When our customers talk to us and they come for these Red Hat trainings, this is the very first thing that they usually talk about. That, you guys could pretty much work with any kind of system that they have. And that's really, really nice. I'm going to ask you the last question. We asked for extra 5 to 7 minutes. We've already gone over that. Last question, okay? Um, so the question is, how can someone get started working with Ansible?
So I mean, obviously I'm on the training and certification team. So I think certainly, work with us in the Netcom team as far as, I think the technical overview is a great place to get started. Obviously, we have some great, foundation level training that's available to you as well. And then, always there's the communities that are out there that you can get access to, upstream Ansible. You can start to, start consuming some of the pre-built automation that's available to you in things like Ansible Galaxy. So there are a lot of different ways to get started with Ansible here. I would definitely, recommend training at some point during that journey. But, if you're like me, then, getting your hands on the product, getting to play around with it at first is definitely a great way to get started. And it's available if you have a RHEL subscription. Ansible comes with that, Red Hat's build of Ansible. If not, maybe you just want to spin up a Fedora machine or CentOS. You could definitely go the upstream version and start to dip your toe in there as well. But we have so many different training options as well for you to get you started, and we'd be happy to have that conversation.
So the Red Hat premium subscription that you're talking about, that is unlimited ELT and virtual trainings with instructors, right? That's the one that we're talking about?
So that's right. So we do have the premium tier of our Red Hat Learning subscription provides both self-paced and instructor-led training for a full year. And so, definitely if you're looking to get started and you don't want to really choose just self-paced or just instructor-led, the premium subscription provides the flexibility to do both and do it on your own time. One other thing with the premium subscription, as opposed to with our typical instructor-led training where you maybe sign up for a 4-day course, this you're actually signing up just for a specific module of a course. And so you can sign up for all 10 modules that a course might be comprised of, but maybe you just want to learn more about building inventories with Ansible, or just scaling your automation with Ansible Tower. And so you could look and see on our schedule, which is published within the platform, to see exactly what that module is covering. You'd be able to register for one or all or just a few of those modules too, and take that training on your own time.
That's fantastic. I have a very stupid question. Don't feel bad. Okay. And this is a question that was actually asked by a customer. It's not from the questions pane. So a customer came to me and they asked me very simply, I know that I cannot be in 2 trainings when it's a virtual instructor-led training, but can I take the virtual instructor-led training and probably take another ELT-based learning or the video classroom learning at the same time simultaneously?
I guess the technical answer is yes. I don't know that I would recommend it. I think context switching is at least for me a way to get me very distracted. But I will say that there are certain topics that I have taken, or certain courses that I've taken on topics that I'm very comfortable with, and so I typically always do just the reading-based, self-paced version of that course. And then there have been times where I'm doing that and I come upon a topic that is kind of stumping me, and I'll switch over to the video classroom. And so, I typically don't recommend it. I would say, try to understand which of the, learning style works best for you. But a lot of the times that can change depending on, a specific topic or how you're grasping it. So, yeah, I think the technical answer is yes, you could do both at the same time if you wanted to. I would say try to focus on one or the other. And if you need to switch back and forth, that's fine too.
You would not believe it. I gave them the technical answer. Okay. Well, thank you so much, John, for answering all of these questions and plus my questions, which were not very bright, but they were there. So now what we're going to do is we're going to launch a quick poll to find out how many people might be interested in taking some additional training. In addition, we have a lot more informative webinars coming up, and you can sign up for them by going to www.netcalllearning.com/webinars/ and you can just register over there. Thank you all for joining us today. I still apologize for the extra time that we took today for the webinar. If you do come up with any additional questions, feel free and send them to webinar@netcomlearning.com at any time. Thank you, everyone. You have a very nice day and a very nice weekend ahead.